Saksham Sharda, welcome to the ROI Online Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
So, Saksham, you have this company called Outgrow.co. You've been in marketing and web development for a while. Kind of give us a little bit, just a quick synopsis of what Outgrow is and why it's important to marketers.
So there's like a booming no-code industry. So basically, people don't want to learn coding anymore. And instead, now we have tools that allow people to make things on the internet without knowing how to code. And at the forefront of this industry is a tool like Outgrow.co, the company I work for, that allows any kind of marketer, publisher, news website, freelancer, or like big enterprises. Anyone can basically go on this tool and make quizzes, calculators, chatbots, assessments, e-commerce recommendations for Black Friday, for instance. So anything you see on the internet, you can make it without knowing how to code using our tool. So it's interactive content. That's what Outgrow allows you to do. And I work as the creative director of the company. So I basically I allow for creativity to happen within the company so that we are constantly exploring new formats of interactive content that can be made. And I allow our customers to also be creative within the tool themselves, because it's basically a drag and drop tool and you can do anything you want. And most of the innovation we've seen in the interactive content space has come from our customers. We have like customers across 21 different industries: real estate, marketing, healthcare, everything. And so that's where we're seeing the most creativity, and that's what I do.
Awesome. So somewhere in your backstory, you became very interested in figuring out how to do this, but you come from the marketing world and the web development world. But I think that one of the biggest problems that marketers face is, how do I get people to identify who they are? How do I get people to stop, pay attention to my content, and actually give me your name and your email address so that we can start to work on hopefully a relationship and maybe a transaction down the road? Where did you start to really connect data, creativity, and marketing?
I think that's an interesting question that you've asked, because that was kind of the reason why we came up with Outgrow in the first place, is because I think there's too much information online. Like, we're living in the information age. That's the classification given to our age. And I think we're living in the late part of the information age. And now it's known more like as the misinformation age, or like, over information age, or like disinformation age. So basically, you go online and there are tons of websites that are competing against you. Say you're a lawyer, right? And you want to get clients. So you open a website and a client ends up on your website, a prospective client ends up on your website, but he doesn't know how to choose because he has billions of other websites to browse of billions of other lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have two kinds of call to actions on such websites. So imagine if the button on that website just said, contact me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in that case, obviously, the person who's visiting the website, he has seen billions of other contact me buttons. He doesn't have any particular reason to click on your button compared to your competitors. Now imagine that there was another website, lawyer's website, which had a call to action like, see how much I can save you in legal fees. And then it asks you a couple of questions, and then it shows you over time your return of investment for hiring this particular legal firm. And all it needed from you was a couple of questions to be answered, and it gave you a personalized result. It has used its expertise. The lawyer has used his expertise in a widget to give you, in a piece of interactive content, to give you a personalized answer. And in cases, it can show you over time how much money you save by using this interactive content. So in a graph, it can show you, like, in the first year, the second year, and the third year, how much money do you save by using this service. So this is a return of investment calculator that is being used, and that is a basic piece of interactive content that we have seen businesses across the board use. HubSpot is using it, the biggest CRM company. We use it ourselves. Outgrow has a return of investment calculator that you can see. We have seen it used by lawyers, by a lot of other businesses. So that's one of the ways in which you can use it, and I think that's a great way to show, because what the tool is also doing in addition. So when I combine this with A, creativity. It's creative because it's giving you a particular value. B, every time it asks you questions, it's also collecting marketing data. So that's where data is coming in. So the lawyer also understands what the audience is. The more people who take this widget to understand, how much they can save in legal fees, the lawyer also understands who these people are. And so he can modify this, or he can change his service to like this kind of social dynamic. So that's totally possible. So that's how you vet creativity and your particular expertise and data.
It's fascinating. So, I've written a book called The Golden Toilet, and in there I talk about that these sexy things like your tool that help you stand out and be different and collect information. If you don't have a system behind it to take that name and uh, email address and work them on through a system where you can bring them closer. Um, that's what most companies do. They work on the sexy stuff, but they don't have the back end to follow up and engage them. Where does your tool support that part of the onboarding? It's not just a marketing asset. You can use it in a sales process. You can use it in other aspects. No?
For sure. So I think the primary, as you're saying, the tool, first of all, like of the 21 different industries that we have, I personally have seen that everyone has expertise in their business. So that step one is that I know that any business out there has some sort of expertise in that particular industry, because that is why that business exists. Now you use that expertise with a no code tool like Outgrow to build a widget. That's the first step. You make something interactive that is fun, that is slick, you put it on your website, and that's step one. And step two is you are providing through that widget, through that interactive content piece, you are providing a particular value to the user. Now, the user will get this value in return for something. The user has to give you something, and that is usually marketing data. Or in other cases, you can also, just before providing the value in the end. So in the case of the lawyer, just before showing that, how much he can save you in legal fees over time, or, giving some tips as to what are the best legal strategies here, which he can just give for free. He could just have a lead generation form before the outcome. So here they can ask for like the email or the company name or like, something else. So the user only gets the value if he enters his email. But with Outgrow, it's also possible, like, we've seen people who make courses online. They ask a couple of questions, they recommend you the right course, and before that they just insert a payment gateway, because Outgrow integrates with Stripe, so you can just collect money too if you want. So that's possible too, and all of this allows you to collect that data, and that automatically enters your marketing funnel. And that's key. So the moment the email enters your marketing funnel, you can set up automatic email follow-ups. You can set up email follow-ups after certain periods of time. So it doesn't have to be even like immediately. It can be like in a month's time in case the lead didn't perform a particular function. So you're able to do that. So I think the possibilities here are endless, because the one step is just the creativity and the expertise. The other step is an automatic follow-up process and data collection, which you can see in the Outgrow analytics section. You can see where in the world people access your widget from. You can see the data by geographies. You can see what browsers they use. Did they use an iPhone to access it? Did they use a tablet to access it? So based on that, you can modify your widget if it's like, to make it more suitable for a tablet, if people were using it on a tablet. So it's totally possible to do that. And we also have like a lot of integration partners where you can send this data and like, automate an email marketing campaign, for instance. It's totally possible to do that.
So when you say widget, you
Mhm.
you're for the folks that are listening, be more specific about exactly what a widget is and where does it live in your business development system.
So I think, again, as I'm saying, anything that's static on the internet or on your website can be converted into something that is interactive. So a widget or an applet, a web applet, is basically any service that makes it easier for the user to like perform a function or to access a service. So, any kind of like, it can be embedded on your website, it can be embedded in your email when you send it to someone, it can be put on your Facebook business page. Nowadays, Facebook has this special option where you can add an additional tab to your business page where you can embed this interactive content or widgets or applets. So, for instance, on our Outgrow's own business page, we have an ROI calculator that shows you that over time how much money you're going to save by using Outgrow itself. So you can do that. We have seen, especially for Black Friday, etc., we have seen a lot of people use e-commerce recommendation widgets, which they embed on their website or their e-store. So, for instance, an example would be, see which sunglasses suit your face the best. Now, obviously, nowadays, like, you go on AliExpress or you like go on Amazon or like, there are many cheaper and cheaper and cheaper options. But what is happening is that this is leading to a flooding of goods in the market. So there's a lot of sunglasses to choose from. This leads to a choice paralysis. You don't know what to buy because there's just too many sunglasses, and you can give discounts, but I still don't know what to buy. Like I know I can get them for 50% off, but do I know whether they suit me? I probably don't know. So we've seen people make these widgets that ask these simple questions like, what is your face shape? What is your eye color? What kind of a beard do you have? What kind of a hairstyle do you have? Pick one of these options. And based on these questions, and they're also subjective questions. For instance, like who's your favorite actor or who's your favorite sports person? So, based on that, it will recommend you 2 or 3 sunglasses, which it thinks is, suitable for you the best. And, basically what these widgets and applets are doing, they are performing the function of a shop assistant. So if you were to go into a mall today, which nobody goes anymore, but if you were to go into a mall, there would be a sales assistant who has expertise in selling you sunglasses or who has expertise in selling you a makeup set, right? And you can't have that online, and that's why you need interactive content or a widget or an applet that allows the user to have that same experience online, like in your e-store. It makes choosing easy. It makes them believe that they're choosing something that's going to be helpful. So that is how we have seen people use these.
That's excellent. You know, as humans, we have this brain, and I talk about we have this brain stem. It's called the bodyguard, and the bodyguard doesn't really process text or verbal stuff, but it processes feelings, and no decisions made until that bodyguard gives approval, and it's
Hmm.
based on feeling. And so when people are online, especially now, what they're doing is they're evaluating from a distance of safety. They're not really exposing themselves to a salesperson until they're really ready, till they've done all of their investigation. And so the interactive aspect that you're talking about provides an experience that feels like, oh, you understand me. You know, I want to evaluate a little bit longer before I interact with you. Where, what does the data show about folks that interact with these calculators or these widgets? What does the data show? Like, how long do they need to interact? And then how often, what's the percentage increase of transaction or decisions?
For sure, it really depends on like which industry you're using. So I could give a generalized data set, but
Mhm.
I think it really depends on what industry it is in. In e-commerce, for instance, we've seen like really huge conversions because like what we have seen, for instance, is that people scrolling down those endless products, and then there is a little widget that chokes up saying, hey, do you need help choosing something, right?
Mhm.
So you must have had that too, like you're going down like Amazon and you don't know which one to pick, and then you just have a little widget that helps you choose, because Amazon also has these e-commerce recommendations, so that's totally there. But in general, I would say there's a 23% increase in conversions, or a sale that is made is increased by 23%. And this is like a very low figure that I'm telling you, because I'm just speaking in general, but we have seen really high boom in this industry, especially also because of the coronavirus, because everyone has had to move online now. So we have seen just really year on a year growth in like different industries, like even healthcare or like fitness. It's been massive, and we are seeing like because like I think young people are more likely to like try out new things. So I think what we've seen, like the biggest increase we've also seen among other industries is the in Instagram. So we've seen a lot of influencers on Instagram use, for instance, fitness apps, like, so it recommends which fitness plan is right for you. So you answer a couple of questions, based on your body type, your weight, etc. It recommends you a particular set of exercises to do, or it recommends you a particular trainer program to join in a gym. It recommends you a particular gym membership. We've seen gyms do this. Or like in case you're a fashion brand, we've seen them like, recommend particular, makeup sets or like, clothes, etc., etc. But the conversions have been like really huge, and even like for B2B industries, like like I said, like the example with the lawyers, but in general with ROI calculators, we have seen like literally every B2B business out there, they've started to use ROI calculators, because the key thing is, uh, with business to business, it's you're more likely giving a service or a product that is not going to give short-term value. It's only going to give long-term value. And that is why, to understand the long-term value, you need to be able to receive certain data from your client, and based on that data, show that how personally over time this product is going to help you. So yes, we've seen like 23% is the conversion rate across all industries, but it ranges to like up till 75% increases in conversion depending on like what your industry is.
Yeah. So the folks that listen to this podcast, they're business owners, and in the U.S., it's very interesting that 98% of the businesses in the US have 20 or less employees. So that means that the owner of the company is having to do most of these different roles, including marketing, including designing their website, or at least overseeing the design of their website. And yet they don't have the luxury of having an army of creatives, web designers, data scientists, that like Amazon does, or the big brands.
Mhm.
And yet these big brands are training their customers, their prospects, in what to expect as far as an online experience. And so what's interesting about your comment about the no code revolution is this is a particular solution where a small business can actually provide an online experience equivalent to what all the big industries do.
Definitely. I think it gives a great opportunity to compete with these big brands, because you know what, if it's like a really enterprise client, because we have enterprise clients too, the point is they have to like make sure that if they make a widget or an applet or a piece of interactive content, it has to go through several departments. And if they're like if they're really big enterprise clients and they have their own coders and developers, it's going to take them even long, to actually produce a widget or an applet at the right time. So, it's a longer process for an enterprise. And that's why the biggest advantage a smaller or medium business or freelancers or influencers or Instagram have is that they can be very flexible. It's a team of what, 20 in a company. And that allows them to really make something over the weekend. It takes you 2 days. So you basically go on outgrow.co, you go on the template section. There are more than 1,000 templates, pre-made interactive content templates that you can just customize within seconds, and you put them on your website. If they don't work, if they don't convert for you, then go and use some other template. If that doesn't convert, try to edit the templates to like suit your particular business, and it's totally possible to do that. So I think it gives a huge advantage, because for the first time, and especially like for this upcoming Black Friday, we're already seeing the amount, because for the first time, the big companies like Walmart and Macy's and everyone, they don't have the advantage of having their big stores. So there's not going to be any physical shopping season. Everything has moved online. So small and medium businesses are competing for the same online marketing space
Mhm.
as these big brands. And that is amazing, because now they have like, this is a level playing field. So if you can actually go out there and show them a sunglasses widget that actually recommends them something that they think is helpful, they're more likely going to go for you, and then Amazon or someone else doesn't really have any particular advantage over you. So it's totally possible to do that.
I think about the challenge for, entrepreneurs and business owners that now they need to have an experience online that's equivalent to the big boys, so to speak. It's like you watch American Idol and, you have all these different singers that audition. And it's obvious the ones that have practiced, they get invited to the next audition. The ones that haven't, they get dismissed ruthlessly. And that same process is happening online. And here's a way when we talk about, oh, you got to stand out in the noise. Well, the noise is a bunch of the same, a bunch of bland, unusual, it's, it's just doesn't connect with you. And so you go and look at a different solution, whether it's a better one or not. And so to have an interactive experience helps you stand out, helps you to be memorable, increases your opportunity to actually have a conversation with this visitor.
Exactly, yeah. Because again, when I said that there's like an overload of information, yes, there's too much information, but then there's also like it's also late capitalism. So there's too many products. Like the dumping of products into the international market by China is like a huge issue because there's too much product. The prices are too low. You don't know what to buy. The quality is questionable. But the key thing is there's just a true decision paralysis because you do not know what to buy from all these options. But I'll give you another example, like where this has been really helpful interactive content recently is, when the coronavirus came along. That's the worst phrase to use. Came along when the coronavirus happened. A lot of like restaurants, because I was in Europe and in Berlin, and a lot of restaurants in Berlin, they were all forced to move online because you were not allowed to go to a restaurant and eat. And now you have these big companies like Wolt and Uber Eats and everything that are doing the deliveries, but they take a certain cut
Mhm.
from the restaurant's bill. But so a lot of restaurants decided that they're just going to build their own takeaway system. And, you would normally, if you're a big enterprise level restaurant chain, you can have hire developers to do that. But one restaurant, like, figured it out that, you can just do it using interactive content. So this was a restaurant in my neighborhood and they looked pretty distraught, like, when the whole coronavirus thing started, because they're like, okay, we're going to lose a lot of money. I was like, you know what? I can just help you build this system on Outgrow because it doesn't really take any time. So we built like a build your own burger menu. So like it's like when you go into a McDonald's and you see like, choose your bun type, choose your lettuce type, choose what kind of drink you want, what kind of meat you want. And based on that, it gives you a customized pricing and and the all that. And you put your delivery address, etc. So you can just build that on Outgrow. And we'd never actually built that on Outgrow before the virus came along. And it's just that you're seeing so much creativity within the software from users, from us, because the key thing we're trying to solve is like our goal was not like oh, are we going to make money from like the fact that restaurants are doing bad? No, our goal was like how can we actually help restaurants so that they can actually compete with bigger restaurant chains, because a quarter of all restaurants will never open again after this recession. Like after coronavirus, like a quarter of all restaurants in Europe are going to go bankrupt. And this is what makes you realize, like as you were saying, of small businesses in the US as well, enterprises are also like in big danger, because like if they don't adapt, they're in big danger. But small restaurants, small businesses have more of a chance to adapt. And we have seen a huge uptick in the number of restaurants that started using the takeaway thing and stopped relying on like Uber Eats and everything. So yeah.
So, all right. So the beauty of this, the opportunity that lies here for small businesses is this no code industry that has developed.
Hmm.
I run an agency and to run an agency, you have to attract really good talent, but they can't be good at everything. And so there are all these opportunities where you could develop some unique aspect that would be a great solution for a website, but we don't have the talent in house. And so I've been really investigating all these no code options. The problem has been like with chatbots. Maybe a couple of years we started playing around with chatbots, but you still have to figure out what would the conversation flow be. And even though it's no coding, you still have to be a little bit intuitive on what the conversation is. Talk about help us understand a little backstory in the no code and what's developing and how how it's really improved in the last couple of years.
Well, so it's like, to me, the no code tools are now as simple as like a PowerPoint, like, to make a PowerPoint. Like, it's even simpler than that. It's just drag and drop. So, even in the case of a chatbot, you can just graphically draw, like, if the user said yes or no, or if he picked like an option saying, I don't know, or he picked an option saying, something else, you can have an entire chatbot tree of options as to where this is leading. So, really, it's got like nothing at all to do with code. It's just like, if he says this or this, if he picks like sunglasses over like a makeup set, then I'm going to lead him here. So I think it's really intuitive and it's really simple. And to top it all, like you just go to outgrow.co, and then if you go to like the template section, there are already like pre-made templates for like 21 different industries for chatbots. So you don't even have to like think like, oh, what is my user going to ask me if he ended up on my website? Nope, you just go there, there's a template, you adapt it, you change a question here or there, it's already set up. That's how simple it is. Like we already thought out, like we had like expert designers come in and think out, oh, what will the flow of this chatbot be, what, like how many possible directions can it go in. And they've made complex chatbots and they've made simple chatbots which are really easy to edit, and it just takes a couple of clicks to just put them on your website. So it's a really good start, and I think it's I know it can be intimidating, like at the beginning, like just to like end up on a website. And I think that's again like the point of the information age is there's too much going on. No code trend is not the only trend, and someone must be like, okay, do I have the time to get into no code right now? I'm like, okay, like remember like when we were kids and our parents said that, oh, coding is the next big thing. You need to learn coding. I was one of those kids. I started to learn coding. I almost failed high school because of coding. That's how bad I am at coding.
Yeah.
And I was just like, and humanity has now reached a point, and this is the future where everyone doesn't need to know how to code because we are so good at coding that we have made no code tools that will do it for you. And so that is why I think everyone should take a shot at it. Like there is a 7-day free trial of Outgrow that you can avail. And I think the link to a 30-day free trial is outgrow.co/ROI. Wait, hold on. No, it's not outgrow.co/ROII. Okay, it's ROII. Yeah. All right. So just use that to extend it to like 30 days and try out some of the templates. If they don't work out, try out a different template for a chatbot or something else. I think the plans start from as low as $14 a month. So it's really easy to like, just experiment with.
So what's happening with this no code movement is it's starting to reveal that in order for you to really be successful and to stand out is you need to be able to think like a human. The industry is changing from I'm a IT, I hang out in code, I avoid people, but I just build this really pretty website that appeals to the algorithms. But what this conversation is revealing is that how important it is and how easy it is to start to reveal your humanity and how you connect with the humans on the other end that you can't interact with in the physical world. And so here's the place for human to human to really excel and to stand out and differentiate yourself, even a small enterprise.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's very important because the push of the market is not towards who's more skillful at coding. The market is more interested in who's creative. The market is more interested in who has expertise to contribute to their industry. That expertise is more important for the market because otherwise the market is just going to be saturated. It wants creativity. It wants people who are good or they know something about that business. A podcaster or like a course, like online course person who figured out something about his industry and he doesn't know how to code, but he needs to like tell people about it or he needs to provide a service. He doesn't know how to code, and that should never have been an encumbrance for him that he doesn't know how to code, right? That is something we can take care of. Like that is something the industry can get better at. Like the industry can make no code tools so that the person out there who can contribute to this economy in some way does contribute to this economy in his way. It is creativity that we are aiming for, humanness, human connectivity, human skill. So the coders are no longer in charge of coming up with creative stuff. So we do not want the developer to think what is great for like a podcasting host. We don't want a developer to think what's great for like, the real estate industry. I don't think the developer knows that because he really just knows how to code. We want the person who's been working in this industry to come up with new ideas. And the way to do is to just unshackle yourself from like this thing that you think you can't do anything on the internet. Come to a no code tool and just see the templates, make your own template from scratch, edit pre-existing templates. A good way to start is like, because I keep saying like you can do something from scratch, but a really good way to start with creativity is to go to an old template that exists on our website and then see, oh, how could I improve this template? And you will think of so many ideas like that would put you in front of the whole no coding movement, because you could make something over the weekend. Like I did it myself. Like, when coronavirus started, I just collated the data from John Hopkins and a couple of CDC and a couple of other sources that were reporting the data. And I just showed a simple calculator that would show you, an interactive calculator that would show you, based on your age, your pre-existing conditions, etc., what is your risk of dying from coronavirus compared to other risks like, pneumonia, or like, other viruses, or like, getting shot, like if you're in the States. But so I was just like showing this, and it just went viral. Like this was at the beginning, because like people were like, this was a new thing that had come along. People didn't know how dangerous it was. Just understand the market, and also don't take things too seriously, as in that, if something is happening, think how you can contribute to the discussion and conversation in your way through your industry. Like, another thing we did was like when 2020, like, kept having a disaster after another disaster after another disaster, to market our own product, Outgrow, we went and one day we just like, at a party, we got kind of drunk, tipsy, and we made a quiz saying, which 2020 disaster are you? And it had like, the wildfires in California, or like the tornado in like the Indian Ocean, or whether the hornets, the murder hornets, I don't know if anyone remembers. And then, nuclear, the almost war that happened with Iran at the beginning of the year. So we had like, or Brexit, we had all of these disasters listed, and we're like, okay, so everyone gets a result at the end. And this went viral on Product Hunt, and it really like brought our product to the forefront, because it was just entertaining. We understood the market, we understood people's frustrations, and we built something that helped people enter a marketing funnel, while at the same time, making them feel entertained. So I think, don't take like, I think people shouldn't take, like, small businesses have the great opportunity to do this, because they don't have to take things seriously, in the sense that an enterprise, if you wanted to do something, you'd probably have to ask your boss, and you have to ask your boss's boss, and your boss's boss's boss. Whereas if you are in a smaller or medium business, make something you think your audience will like. If you get your brand name out there, they are immediately gonna like click on it. They're gonna like explore who you are if you like just put your talent out there.
Yeah, I love it. So that's been the dilemma with all this. We're doing business in a physical world, and there's a lot of things that we do naturally to create a good experience, but we're inept or really weak as far as creating a virtual experience that feels good, that makes me feel understood and safe. And so I think that's really important. And what you're talking about is that even though you're not a coder, even though you're not necessarily a marketer, you understand your clients, you understand your customers, and you have a unique perspective and value that you have to offer them. And by taking advantage of these no code tools like Outgrow, then you can start to deliver a very unique, differentiated experience online. It's about delivering an experience that people appreciate, that separates you from the humdrum, just typical click here to schedule a call.
For sure. And like, I think like a lot of people believe that they have businesses that exist, but it wasn't due to some special talent they had. Like, it's like a very famous imposter syndrome, where
Mhm.
people think like, oh, we made something, but I just basically got lucky. So, it's not that I was like, blah, blah. I think that's completely untrue. I think capitalism works in a way that it makes you think that you have imposter syndrome and that you don't have actually anything to contribute, or something like that. Key thing is that you have to understand, if your business exists even in this terrible economy, like, let me just tell you, if you had to make that business 40 years ago, you would have a much easier time. You are where you are because you have some talent to contribute, and to bring it to the world, you have to use no code tools, because just whatever you learned, whatever experience you learned from running a business for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, like, however long you ran it for, use no code tools to crystallize that experience that you had into a service that is easily accessible by people on the internet. The moment you make that service, you will automatically go viral. Like, it will be just there because you would have brought your expertise, you have contributed to the market and to the economy. And I think everyone's contribution is important. And that is why everyone needs to use no code tools, because I'm excited. Like the biggest contributions, the biggest creativity comes from our clients. Like I can't repeat how much, like as the creative director of Outgrow, like it's not my team, it's not our developers, it's no one, it is our clients. I've seen them make such great stuff. Yeah.
So give me an example of an idea that one of your customers came up with that you thought was so smart that you actually stole that idea and utilized it yourself.
Well, one of the things one of our clients came up with, this was like back when Airbnb was like booming. So this is just Airbnb just entered the market like in the Northeast 2000s. And one of our real estate clients thought, well, oh, because, a lot of people think like, oh, Airbnb, real estate's not going to sell anymore. What are we going to do? Instead, one real estate client thought that, what if I sold property to people who want to Airbnb that property and not people who actually want to live in it?
Mm.
So they came up with the idea of a calculator that would show you based on, it'll ask a couple of questions, where's your property located? Is it in a historical, is it near a historical site? Is it near a beach? How far away is it from a beach? How often in a day, in a year do you want to host for, your property to guests? So it'll ask you a couple of questions based on data it had collected, publicly available data from Airbnb listings. And then it showed you over time how much money you could make by Airbnb your property. So it was basically like, how much can you make by Airbnb this property that you will buy from us? So, so it was showing a great value to that property. So they were selling that property based on its Airbnb value, which is much higher than a normal rental value. So they were able to sell more properties because they could show how valuable it would be to just get this property and just like leave it lying around. So that really went viral. I think it was featured on Trend Hunter. It was featured on Product Hunt. It was featured on a lot of websites with like 6 million different monthly visitors. So that was one way in which a real estate company used it. Another company that used it was an automobile company, which showed you how much money you can save by using a Tesla. Now, everyone thinks Tesla is an expensive car, but over time, you save so much in like, tax costs because you are contributing to the environment. So based on which American state you are in, you get a lot of tax breaks for like, Tesla. You also, it's very energy efficient. So you save a lot on fuel costs. So it showed you over time how much you would save by buying a Tesla. And that in that way, they increase their Tesla sales. So we've just seen like across the industry, like it's not even a joke. Like, and I'll tell you, like the silliest of examples is one of the clients who wanted to sell makeup sets, and I had no idea, like what particular questions you ask in order to sell makeup sets, and he told me the color of the vein in your wrists, like under your wrists, the color of the vein determines what foundation goes on your face. And his entire e-commerce recommendation was based on that key question, that what is the color of the vein under your wrists? And then it's and again, like when I give you these examples, I hope like everyone who's listening understands that this is expertise these people collected over time in their industry. There was nowhere for me to know this, right? But this is,
Mm.
people know these little details. Like ask the shop assistant who's working in your store and he will tell you these details. They've learned it over time, and all of this knowledge needs to get on the internet. So there's a force that is automatically pushing people to put it on the internet in no code interactive widgets, and it is going to happen either way. So I think everyone should use it.
That's interesting. The color of your vein. So when you first learned about Outgrow,
Hmm.
or what what really convinced you and got you excited about the potential that Outgrow or this no code solutions offer? What was the one thing that really just turned your energy on about this?
I think the flexibility, it's because the tool, like the company is called Outgrow, which is So it's not really static in time. It's constantly trying to outgrow itself. Our marketing strategies are outgrowing itself. The departments are outgrowing each other and like merging into each other. The flexibility offered. So we don't like, as the creative director, I do not market products anymore. I market events, as in the sense that, the BuzzFeed quiz kind of model, for instance, when we made like which 2020 disaster are you, I
Mm.
had the freedom and the liberty and the non-reliance on developers that I could just make this, even when I'm a little tipsy with my friends on a weekend. We're just like, okay, let's do this, because you know what, I know how to use this tool. It's like drag and drop, easy to make. Made that. It's my I am completely independent of the developers. I am free to use my creativity, and for me it's like the best job I've ever done. It's just so exciting. I can make something, I can realize my marketing idea within a day. It doesn't even take a day. So like, I'm always at the forefront of the wave, literally the avant-garde. Like, yeah, I'm at the forefront of the wave, in the sense that coronavirus had just taken off and we managed to make a calculator. People were just starting to feel the frustration with 2020, and we managed to make something that got them to take that frustration out. So you're looking at these like bigger waves that are going in the market. Or like with the coronavirus thing, the what was that, the restaurants, people were like, the restaurant owners around me, they looked distraught, and my immediate response was, oh, how can my company help them? And
Right.
and so we're like, we can help them with something that eventually ended up helping us as well, because when we made those restaurant takeaway widgets and things, a month later, websites like Product Hunt and like, all over the world, they started coming up with hackathons saying, make something to help people during coronavirus. But we were already doing that. So by the time these websites came up with these competitions, we'd already made these tools. So we submitted these tools to these websites, and we were the finalists in the Product Hunt Coronavirus Hackathon, which has like a 6 million strong voting audience. So, I think it's just being like, the ability to be free from coding is just, it's just very powerful. And I hope like a lot, everyone who's listening is able to experience this through no code tools, because I have experienced it and it's really powerful. And it really allows you to play marketing like it's a game, and instead like your future depends on it. Like, you just play it with every trend that comes along.
In my book, I talk about, that the entrepreneurs want to put everything at risk. And yet there's this mindset that we're beholden to IT to sign off on our ideas or not. And it's like, no, they're not, they didn't have your vision. They didn't put everything at risk. You shouldn't be beholden to their approval or disapproval of your idea. And so I love your message there.
For sure, like I'm here to start like an anti-developers war. I hope our, I hope our product manager doesn't listen to this.
So
Yeah,
what's
so
what's one question, Saksham, that you wish people would ask you when you get to do these interviews, but they never do?
hmm. One question that people should probably ask me. Hmm. Oh, I never thought of that. Well, that was a good question, because obviously no one's ever asked me that. So probably that question. That's something I'd have to think about. I don't know. I couldn't just think of something off the top of my head. Nah, it's just, it's really like, I think I already like, I think you've covered like really good points. So I think my main thing is, especially as a small or medium business, is be aware of like how this is the age of the small businesses. Like they're coming after the big companies. They're coming like really hard. The EU is coming with its anti-competition things against Google and Facebook and everyone. And the reason they're coming is because this is the age. Like the German economy, for instance, runs on small businesses. That's why it's so flexible. It's so strong. Because all of these businesses are able to do so much in so little time. And there's a good competitive environment, and like the Instagram influencers who can make $1 billion company, like fashion brands are now made on Instagram. Like they're made and destroyed on Instagram, like within couple of years, and that's possible. So I think key thing is play the game like it's a game, because the marketing game, it's just a game. Like and the more you play it, the more you enjoy playing it instead of like relying on developers or like feeling pressured by departments, the better you're going to do. So I know that wasn't a question, but playing the whole thing as a marketing game is is a theme that I want to address. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that because, I believe that the invisible heroes of our economies are these small businesses.
Mm,
They think about it. They start a business, they risk their future. They put everything on the line. They risk their family's future. But what do? They create jobs. They produce services and products that improve our lives. And we typically think of businesses as these big entities that are corrupt and they're overpricing and they're against the environment. But that's just a little segment of what's really going on. And so my message in my book as well is that these heroes, these tools can empower you to go around the big competitors. You can be scrappy, you can be creative. You don't need to know code. You just need to be use that creative spark that was in you when you started this business.
exactly. Yeah. And the experience you've learned since then as well. Like, for sure. I think that can be the general theme for sure. Like, stop thinking it's an imposter syndrome and all of that. Just put it out there. And the thing is, like, even if your idea doesn't work, in the process of realizing it in a no code tool, you would come up with more new ideas and you
Mm.
would be able to test it. You'd be able to measure, whether it actually worked because there's an analytics section that's wedded into these tools. So I think that's the way to go. And just use the outgrow.co/ROII, and you would be able to like extend it to a 30-day trial to just use it through this entire shopping season that's coming up, New Year's, Christmas, and just try it out.
Saksham, you've been a great guest on the ROI Online Podcast. Where
Thanks for
can
having me.
well, I'm proud to have you. Where can people connect with you?
Easiest way is to go to outgrow.co/ROII. Because from there you'd be able to get a customized plan for yourself as well. But if you have any questions, just email us at questions@outgrow.co.
All right. All right. Well, thanks so much for being on the ROI Online Podcast, Saksham.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap.